how do you actually drive customer adoption when there's no touch and feel and purely digital?
But what a lot of people aren't doing is one, emphasizing on the R&D and the product, ingredient, the product experience.
Sustainability is not your proposition. You're actually solving real world problems. Sustainability is just a story.
Actually, sustainability used to be our most compelling value proposition. Sustainable, all natural, vegan, cruelty free. I'm Dhruv, Madhok, one of the co-founders of Arata, which is a plant-based hair care and skincare brand, which sells direct to consumer. I'm sure everyone in this room has heard of D2C or the key trend that is selling direct to the consumer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of like a reverse Mary Meeker. So instead of looking at historical reports, I'm going to do a little bit of future predictions, and I'm going to predict 3 trends. And my predictions are: 1, there will be lots of new brands. So Shauri, if you think there are 800 D2C brands, get ready to add another 0 in front of it. I predict there'll be another 7,000 brands coming over the next 5 to 10 years. Number 2, and I'll get to why I believe so about that. Number 1, lots of new brands. Number 2, there will be heavy consolidation. So not all of these brands will become breakout brands, will achieve critical scale. There will be consolidation. They'll become friends. They'll get tucked into larger organizations, or they'll align with strategics. And number 3, and somebody had touched upon this as well, my prediction is that everybody will focus on ESG, and sustainability will become a very important part of the business. So it'll be very important to be good for you and good for the environment. So there are lots of new brands. There's a gold rush, and the lockdowns are helping. So thanks to the shovel makers. So when I say shovel makers, I mean the brands of the companies that are enabling direct to consumer. So Shopify, which is a no-code platform. Razorpay, which is a payment gateway which allows debit cards, credit cards, wallets, UPI. Shiprocket, which is taking care of logistics. Imiza, which is a third party which is doing warehousing and delivery. Value First and Twilio, which is doing SMSs, emails, and Apurva had brought up a very important point. There should be no trade-off between your own store and say buying from a marketplace like an Amazon. And thanks to Shopify, thanks to Shiprocket, thanks to Razorpay, today there isn't necessarily a trade-off. Now, you can have your own store, but it's also important for brands to leverage marketplaces for what they have, which is footfall and growth. And as Pinky had mentioned, data is actually very, very important. So, and this might be one of the reasons why there are so many new brands. So I feel like data is solving for two-way communication. So whether it's explicit communication with the customer, where they're responding to you on WhatsApp and telling you that, I actually don't like this about your t-shirt, or I actually don't like this about your shampoo, or whether it's something a little bit more subtle, which is like reading data and understanding why customers are dropping off or where they're coming from, and what their likes and dislikes are. So, we'll see a lot of brands solving for specific niches. So historically, I feel like a lot of the large FMCG brands made products for the masses. So if hypothetically, in our case, our best-selling product is our hair gel. So previously, I feel like a large-scale FMCG player would have made a hair gel, which applied to as many people as possible. Over the last 8 years, people would have started searching for hair gel, which is organic and chemical-free. And now, thanks to data and very, very specific searches, people are searching for things like hair gel, which is organic and chemical free, specifically for curly, wavy hair. Now, these are niches that are not being addressed by the larger players because it's not worth their time. And that is the reason why there's so many direct to consumer brands coming out, because they're focusing on this long tail. They're solving for customers who want hair gel for organic, chemical-free, wavy hair. So that's one example is, at Arata, our best-selling products are our hair gel, and we figured that, customers were looking for safe styling products. So like this, Shauri, you're going to see lots of brands solving for specific niches that come about. But still, 10% of all business happens from these independent brands. 90% will still happen with the larger conglomerates. But my takeaway is, from point number one, that there's lots of new brands. The takeaway is solve for having, for that long tail with data. There will be, a new generation of 100 million customers coming online for the first time, browsing content, consuming content, then buying basics, then buying niches. Make sure you're ready to solve and address the needs for all these consumers. The second trend is heavy consolidation. So we're already seeing this with, the roll-up brands. So there's, companies like Global Bees or Mensa or, Goat Labs that are going about acquiring brands and rolling them up to try and take them public. We are also seeing strategics like Unilevers and Marigos and Good Glams and Nykas make investments and acquisitions. So I feel like 90% of business will still continue coming from a lot of these larger players who will scoop up the smaller brands and, tuck them into their business. So the takeaway is, if you're looking for inorganic growth, you can, in your business, in your product or service, look for startups that are solving specific niches and do that build versus buy analysis and essentially, bring them on board or essentially acquire them, not necessarily for their product, but for their customer. And the third point is sustainability. And I think this is going to become a very, very important trend. And like I said, where I used to think hotels were just cutting costs by, saying, don't, wash your towel if you don't need to. We are seeing customers asking us, how do we recycle our plastic, or how do we, send our empties back to you? Are your ingredients sustainably sourced? Are they natural? Are they organic? Now, Arata didn't actually start out like this. When we started, we used virgin plastic. We used single-use plastic and tapes. We had non-biodegradable labels. We even used beeswax in our ingredients, which is, derived from honeybees and people considered, to be, harmful to the animal ecosystem. But ever since, one thing that was constant was we were always all natural, non-toxic, and non-synthetic and totally safe. But we realized that we have to also become entirely vegan and cruelty-free, and we have to become sustainable. So we introduced 100% recycled plastic, which we went, my co-founder and I actually flew down to Shanghai and found a factory that was taking waste from oceans and landfills and melting them into, plastic waste into bottles, sanitizing it, melting it, molding it, and shipping it back to us. So we were the first, or arguably the first brand in the country to be using 100% recycled plastic for our packaging. We switched out our labels for 100% biodegradable food grade ink. So whenever it lands up in a landfill, it doesn't, harm the ecosystem. As a matter of fact, I said our lip balm was actually one of our best sellers, and our lip balm was actually had beeswax in it. Even though it was one of our best sellers, we actually took it off the market, and we took a hit in revenues and reformulated it and launched it without beeswax because we wanted to be vegan and cruelty free. So that's one example of how committed we are to sustainability. Even though our packaging, which was virgin plastic, was significantly cheaper, we actually started paying top dollar for recycled plastic and took a hit in our gross margins. I can't say the investors were very happy. I can't say, our CFO was very happy, but all I can say is I was able to sleep peacefully knowing that I'm not contributing further to this plastic pandemic. So the takeaway from here is sustainability matters. Make changes now. If you can implement them within the next 90 days, do it. If you can't, at least start making a step in that direction. And with that, my monologue is now over. My email ID for any questions is dhruv.madhok@arata.in. Thank you so much. Happy to take questions here in a breakout or on email, and stay connected with everyone.
I started my career in a consumer goods company. The paradigm in a consumer product or a large brand was always about scale, right? So whether it was the factories, it was driving efficiency through volumes. But how I heard you speak is about your nimbleness, agility at the marketplace. Mm-hmm. And a large part of that value chain is kind of outsourced, right?
Correct.
So what I'm fascinated to, what will be fascinating for me to understand, therefore, is how do you look at the business, and what is the brand really when your manufacturing is kind of outsourced, your delivery is outsourced, so those were kind of places which would help differentiate the business either in terms of access or sale. And the second piece is how do you actually drive customer adoption when there's no touch and feel and purely digital? So these are two questions which I would be really interested to.
Right. No, fair enough. So you're absolutely right in that, we're working with a lot of these standard, it's very modular, right? Everybody's using Shopify, everybody's using Razorpay, everybody's using, the similar contract manufacturers, everybody's using the same logistics companies. But what a lot of people aren't doing is, one, emphasizing on the R&D and the product, ingredient, the product experience. And also because of our very rigid, mandates of being all natural, vegan and cruelty free, non-toxic. It has to be, objectively on a scale of 1 to 3 non-toxic. There's this website called EWG Skin Deep, where we run all our ingredients and make sure that it's, certified non-toxic. So we have so many restrictions that most contract manufacturers can't give us pre-existing formulations. They can't be like, this is a formulation we're making for XYZ brand. We just add a different fragrance and you take it. So we have to have a totally different formulation team. So our product in itself is quite different, and that's how we differentiate. We differentiate ourselves in the packaging, branding, unboxing, the ingredient profile, the fragrance profiles. It's all encompassing. So it's, to summarize, it's a whole brand experience that's different. And this is a very valid question. Every investor asks, what's so different about you? Patanjali is there and Himalaya is there and Mama Earth is there. Then how will you survive? And this is, one of the answers. And to your second question, that how do you convince somebody to try your product? One is by solving a real problem. When we launched the first range of products, it was like a face wash for everybody for daily use. And then we realized that that's a very hard, product to sell. We then realized that we have to go super specific and solve real needs. So for example, we found that 60% of the country has wavy curly hair, but there was no brands making products for wavy curly haired customers. So we've launched a range of styling of enhancement, maintenance and styling products, specifically for wavy curly haired market, for the wavy curly haired customer. And we've done this in collaboration with Tapsi Pannu, and that association actually goes live in the next 12 hours. So it's like finding niches and finding problems that people are searching for online that we would have been oblivious to before because we didn't have that data. Now, because of what people are searching in our, search bar on the website, or, the queries that we're getting in on our Instagram, or, the complaints that people are writing on other brands, comments, we can pick up on what specifically people are looking for and then build a, compelling hypothesis about how well it could sell, and then launching that product. So that's how we go about. And of course, compelling storytelling, compelling creative, compelling copy, and, thumb-stopping kind of creatives.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Dhruv, I have this is Ramit.
Hey, Ramit.
I mean, first of all, congratulations of having taken the harder route on sustainability, because that's definitely the harder route. And it really worries me these days that, Vatsal had asked for a trend, and this whole instant economy, especially, and I spent over a decade in food, the whole instant economy is completely counter to sustainability, because the more instant you go, the more you're sort of taking away from any sustainability possibility. And with this whole price pressure and instant economy and this whole cultural sort of the pop culture of I want it now and I want it cheap and I can get it on Amazon, I can get it anywhere. Just wondering if sustainability necessarily means you'll be more expensive, you'll cater to more premium niches. Do you think that there is a counter pop culture that's sort of not coming in the way of, because I also notice that sustainability is not your proposition. You're actually solving real world problems. Sustainability is just your story.
So actually, sustainability used to be our most compelling value proposition. And our value proposition when we launched was being sustainable, all natural, vegan, cruelty free. But what we realized was there was so much greenwashing going on in the ecosystem, and everybody was positioning themselves. So people were saying we are 100% recyclable plastic. Now, every plastic is more or less recyclable, right? And people are saying we are natural and, made of 100% active ingredients, but that doesn't mean that it's all natural. So we realized that initially when we launched, we thought that would be a great value proposition, but that became a hygiene. So we had to start solving actual, problems and concerns for the customer, and that made it easier to sell. But yes, it was initially more expensive, especially when you're starting out, to be sustainable. But fortunately, most of the companies here have achieved certain scale, and most, companies, once they achieve a certain scale, they can kind of make sustainability sustainable for them, make it feasible for them, because ultimately this is a business. So that doesn't mean that you run on, negative gross margins. And so what we kind of did was we knew, early on that we'd have to start becoming sustainable. So while we used virgin plastic, it was a means to an end. The moment we raised some money and we realized that, now we can carve out a small budget, and, even run on a slightly negative, for some time, and then scale up. And now, fortunately, even with all the sustainable practices, we've achieved a point where hopefully within the next quarter, we should have a flat EBITDA. So where there's a will, there's a way. The path may not always be easy, but it's one that you have to look out for. And we knew that from a price point perspective, we might be 500 to 700 rupees, and that's significantly more expensive than your HUs and PNGs. But it's also half the price of a Kama and a third of the price of the Forest Essentials. So so there is a little bit of a little bit of a limitation with whom all can afford sustainable products, but we're endeavoring to keep driving prices lower as we achieve scale.
It was phenomenal. Just I think, Dhruv, for any brand or any company, etc., like as we were talking, sustainability is a must. Big congratulations, and I think the like you defined, like where's there's a will, there's a way. You have to just kind of go after it. So
absolutely.
Yeah, but it would be interesting to hear how did you convince your CFO on some of the recyclable plastic and
So it was actually, we realized that, I actually built out a model and said, once we achieve certain scale and we've got certain sales, and, that's when we can, one, optimize, from the supply side, improve the packaging material costs once we've achieved that scale. Second, we work with Indian suppliers to also have them start manufacturing the same spec of recycled plastic, so we no longer had to import it. So that helped us, improve our margins. So we basically just showed the roadmap to sustainability for the business and feasibility for the business. And now I know that that's not, necessarily, always true, because we made the decision to raise, outside capital. So it may or may not be true for all businesses, but if there is a potential, it would be worth the trade-off, because we now find that a lot of people on our Instagram actually put stories and and posts saying, look at this lovely brand, and look how they're using recycled plastic, and look how there's no single plastic use, and look how they've used fabric bags instead of plastic pouches, and so forth.
Dhruv, I want to ask you something. So in this D2C environment that you spoke about, right? Somewhere you mentioned that there's always a tug of war, which is like, where do you sell your product on, right? As a brand, whether you want the consumer to consume your product on your website, on your channels direct, or is it on the marketplace? And then how do you balance that? Is that something that you also see? Because where I come from, this is a constant tug of war that we have. Do we sell our products on the marketplace, or do we sell it on our own channels, right? And if we do that, as a marketer, we're making all efforts, whether it is adoption of products, digitization, all your branding efforts. If still I can't get the consumers to consume the products on my own channels, they still go onto the marketplace. So in a typical D2C environment, how do you what kind of trends you see, and how do you balance this out, right? And what do you see the other brands doing, especially in this case? Absolutely.
I think balance is a great word, because you can't be skewed towards, one, because then you're heavily dependent on, on the marketplaces. But, I believe that if the brands and products, promise and experience is not compromised or jeopardized in any aspect, then I'm okay with also selling our products on marketplaces, because we have to leverage what the marketplaces have to offer. They have the footfall, they're aggregators. So we may as well put our inventory there and acquire the customers, and hopefully have that experience that was so great. That native experience of the product or that service is so great that the customer starts researching about the brand on their own, in their own spare time on Google, and then we kind of acquire them. Or in our case, for example, we use label art and we use coupons on mono cartons and inserts to drive traffic back to our website, or we ask people to sign up for our community or newsletters on our website. So these are some of the ways we use to cross-pollinate people from marketplaces back to our own channel. But they both have their own role to play. Your own channel is great because there's no margins that you have to share with the middleman, and you get to learn a lot about the customer. But if you don't have that critical mass, you don't have that scale, you can definitely leverage marketplaces and enjoy the distribution and credibility and goodwill that they've built up until you build some of your own after the customer gets to experience it.